All right, I'm going to say it. This little guy is affordable, it's fantastic, and it's probably my favorite handheld of the year. Yes, I'm going to go over all of the reasons why here in a minute, but first, some context. Well, the Game Boy Advance SP is one of the highest selling, most popular handheld gaming consoles of all time, and I never had one. Yes, that's right. Back in the day, I totally missed it. I was totally broke back in 2003 when it first came out. But today, in 2024, I got my hands on the next best thing, the Anbernic RG35XXSP. Yes, quite a mouthful. The SP part of it, it's the most important part because it's like the Game Boy Advance SP, but like on steroids. It might be my favorite retro gaming handheld ever made, to be honest with you. I'm going to give you some pros and cons so you can decide for yourself if it fits into your retro gaming life. Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Clayton. If you like retro gaming and gaming in general, then please subscribe to the channel. I just love talking about this stuff. So hopefully you'll join me and hang out here as we kind of look at this device and how it might fit into your life. All right, let's talk about the Anbernic RG35XXSP. But before we do, I want to give you some context about my Game Boy journey recently, my Game Boy Advanced journey, and maybe you'll be able to relate to this. So I grew up loving my original Game Boy. I took it everywhere with me. I'd curl up in bed, play games before bed, Mario Baseball, Tetris, Super Mario Land. I couldn't believe I was playing a full Super Mario Brothers game in my hand. I loved that handheld experience. But then in 1995, I went off to college, never owned a Game Boy Color or a Game Boy Advance, so I was broke as a joke. Now I'm 47 years old, and lately I've been really hankering to get back into experience some of these games and these systems for the first time. And this little device has become my ultimate Game Boy emulator companion to play a complete library of the original Game Boy games, Game Boy Color games, and Game Boy Advanced games as well. Now, first things first, let's talk about specs. Now, I'm not going to go into a deep dive here. That's not what I do here, but Russ over at Retro Game Core is a master of that. So if you want to check out some of his great videos, you can do more of a deep dive on all of the feeds and speeds if you want. My focus, though, is on the experience and how this fits into your life. So here are some of the basics. It comes in 4 colors: transparent black, transparent blue, silver, and gray. Now I grabbed the solid silver, which has a real retro feeling to me. I might also end up buying the transparent blue because I think it just looks great as well. From a CPU perspective, this baby is packing an H700 quad-core ARM Cortex-A53. And GPU is dual-core Mali G31 MP2. It also has a 3.5-inch 640 by 480 IPS screen, and I think the screen looks absolutely gorgeous to my 47-year-old eyes. It also has 1 GB of RAM, 64 GB of internal storage on an SD card, and it's expandable with 2 card slots right here in the front. So okay, nerdy stuff out of the way. Let's talk about how it actually feels to use this device. Forget about the feeds and speeds and all of that stuff. Well, it's bigger than the original SP. So if you had a Game Boy Advance SP, it's a little chunkier, like me during the holidays after eating all that turkey that I just had. The buttons feel clicky and responsive. It's a really solid build quality on this device. I love it. The buttons don't feel cheap at all. And I freaking love the D-pad on this thing. Really, really impressed with how good and responsive this D-pad is. It just feels great. Plus, I just love the indentations here where your fingers rest nicely inside of the D-pad and over the buttons as well. And let's just talk about the clamshell. This thing is so tiny, it just fits perfectly inside of like a cargo pant pocket. It's amazing. Or just right into a little pocket inside of a bag. If you're taking a subway trip or a long bus trip or a train trip or an airplane trip, it doesn't matter. I took this on a long weekend trip just recently, and I brought my Nintendo Switch with me. I was playing a game there as well, but then I switched over, and for the whole long flight, I was playing this. I was playing the Anbernic device on this flight, and it was just fantastic. It was a really great experience to be able to travel with. Let's start with some of the impressions right out of the box. It's pretty basic. I mean, when you unbox this thing, Anbernic has done a solid job. Here inside, you're going to get the console. You're going to get a USB-C charging cable, user manual, and some other goodies, but nothing's too fancy. It just gets the job done. Now, let's move on to the build quality and the design. So the RG35XXSP has really a nice, sleek, compact form factor. It fits comfortably in the hand, and even during those like marathon gaming sessions, big thumbs up on this. My hands Didn't get terribly tired after playing for a number of hours. It felt really nice. I don't know how long you're going to sit and play this, maybe a few hours at a time. And for those types of gaming sessions, it's fine. It's not going to hurt your hands. Yes, it is pointy. It is a square. So if you're not into that kind of thing, that might be a factor. But, it's not going to feel as wonderful like a Nintendo Pro controller, or heck, the Wii U Pro controller was probably my favorite controller of all time. I love that thing. It's so comfortable to play for really long gaming sessions. Again, you trade off with portability and the fact that it's a square in your hand is not going to feel like those devices, but still really comfortable to play. All right, now let's talk about the software. When you open up this device for the first time, can you play it, or do you have to install a whole bunch of stuff on it? No, you can play right out of the gate on this thing. Yes, the stock OS, while it's not the prettiest thing in the world and it looks a little dated, but it gets the job done. It comes preloaded with a bunch of ROMs on here, a bunch of games, so you can jump right into some different systems and start playing some of these ROMs right away. But again, this device really for me is a tinkering device. I mean, if you're watching this channel, probably you're going to want to load on some kind of other front end, some other operating system, emulation station, Newly, or MuOS. And I ended up using MuOS as my main front end for all of my emulation and games on here because it was just easier. Yes, Emulation Station has a beautiful interface. I just found that MuOS really was more intuitive for my needs, to be able to navigate the folder structure, put ROMs in different folders, and it just finds it. It just works, and it's so fast. You can launch games so quickly using MuOS, and you can close them quickly as well. They've also added, upon a recent update, the box art scraping, so give you nice box art for all of your different ROMs that are also stored on here. It's not the prettiest looking OS. I think Emulation Station allows you to have a much cleaner, nicer looking interface. But the reason I chose MuOS, or MuOS, however you want to pronounce it, is because I really wanted this to be a Game Boy Advance device only. So I'm not concerned about scrolling through all sorts of different game systems, which is why I use Emulation Station on the Steam Deck till I can see what, Game Boy, NES, Super Nintendo, and I can scroll through those beautiful designs in that front end and then choose the system, go in and pick the games. Beautiful, beautiful for Emulation Station. What I really wanted this to be was just a Game Boy Advance system. I didn't want to play, yes, I can play Atari games, you can play all the way up to PlayStation 1 on this device if you wanted to, but I really wanted this to be a Game Boy Advance device, meaning I don't want to load it up with PlayStation games. Again, that's why I have the Steam Deck. I really wanted this to be a GBA device, and so for me, MuOS was perfect. And it makes it very easy. So you can put all your ROMs into those folders. It just figures it out. Launches really fast. It closes really fast. And again, Russ over at Retro Game Core has a full deep dive guide, so you can go through and install it yourself if you'd like. There's plenty of other guides and tutorials out there if you want to install this particular OS on this device. But it's super great, easy to use, and I absolutely love it. Yeah, so let's talk performance. I mean, this thing plays everything from Atari all the way up to PlayStation. You can play some Dreamcast games on here, Nintendo 64, but again, I didn't want it for that. I just want it to be a Game Boy emulation device. And yes, you can play all these other classic titles, and you can play all sorts of classic systems. That's great. But I wanted it to pop for my Game Boy Advance games, and the screen looks amazing. It's bright and vibrant. It really makes those retro games pop, and it's absolutely beautiful. Let's talk about the battery life here. The battery life is really decent. About 8 hours of battery life. I played on an airplane trip and car ride, and bouncing back and forth between a lot of different games, turning it off and on. So about 8 hours has been my experience in the battery life on this, and it also charges in about 8 hours using the USB-C cable. Again, not too shabby in the battery department, and I love to be able to put this into sleep mode just by closing the clamshell. Let's talk about some pros and cons. Okay, here's what I loved. It's portable. It's incredibly comfortable. It has high game compatibility with all sorts of different systems if you want to go that direction and play PS1 games all the way down to NES and Atari. It doesn't really matter. It has great screen quality. Just looks beautiful, this little device. Solid battery life, 8 hours of battery life in my testing on this. And then on the flip side, it has limited storage. Yes, you can upgrade the storage and put as large of SD cards as you want in here. It has some emulators that need tweaking. Emulation Station, dealing with Linux and back and forth. It can be a little bit of a pain to try to get some of that up and running on this device. But if you're into tweaking and you're into dealing with that kind of stuff, then you shouldn't have a problem with it. Again, I found Mu OS to be incredibly easy and intuitive, but overall, I'd say the pros definitely outweigh the cons. And let me just say this, I can talk about battery life, I can talk about the screen, I can talk about the games, but how does it make you feel? Right? Like, what is the experience holding a device that is in many ways just like the Game Boy Advanced original SP, but now you can play hundreds and hundreds of games from the Game Boy Advance library through emulation in your pocket with 8 hours of battery life? And it's the nostalgia that I think is most important with this. And you can't, that's an intangible that you can't put into a list of, like, you know, specs, hardware specs for this device. And to be able to just pop this open when you're waiting for a movie theater, you're in the movies waiting for 20 minutes to go through previews or something, or you're in line getting coffee, and you can pull this out and play a game. Play a Game Boy Advance game, like with the click of a button. It's unbelievable. So, is the Anbernic RG35XXSP worth it? Absolutely. And I would say it's probably my favorite handheld system of the year. If you're a retro gaming fan, personally, I love this combination of portability, performance, and it's really earned a spot in my everyday carry backpack. I have a little pouch right at the top of my backpack. It slides right in there. I didn't talk about the pricing on this. I mentioned it's incredibly affordable right at the top of this, but they have all sorts of sales on Anbernic's website, or if you get it from AliExpress. So affordable, so cheap. It's less than the cost of a AAA game today. You want to go out and buy Black Myth Wukong and pay, you know, $80? You're going to save $30 by buying with this device. It's crazy that this is about 50 bucks, depending on the sales and everything. That's why I'm not giving you a specific price, but just check it out right now. Go to Anbernic, their website, and check out the pricing on this, because they've got all sorts of Christmas deals this time of year. So didn't want to lock into a specific number, but it is definitely very affordable and less than the cost of a AAA game. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, guys. Drop me a comment below. Do you already own one of these? How have you tweaked it? How are you using it? Or are you thinking about picking one up for yourself or for the retro gaming fan in your life? Let me know down below, and we'll see you next time, everyone.